I am really happy to welcome to the podcast Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Dan, it's great to have you. Great, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. We've known each other a little bit, but you've known Debbie, my wife, even longer. So thanks for joining me.
Sure, and around here they call it Lieutenant Dan or Dan, and we've known each other so long, it's just Dan, Dinesh, but thank you.
Okay, will do. Let me start by talking about the runaway Texas Democrats. I believe the Texas legislative session just ended, and I know Governor Abbott has been saying, hey, listen, we're not going to let these guys shut us down. We're going to keep these sessions going. So let me ask you about that. What is the next step? As I understand, the Texas Democrats aren't coming back anytime soon. One guy, I believe, did return. So kind of update me about what's happening right now and what happens next.
Sure. So our regular session, which is 140 days long every other year, we have a lot to do for the ninth largest economy in the world, a lot to do in a short period of time, but we normally get our work done. But at the end of session, there were a number of bills, including our election security bill, that the Democrats killed over in the House, and a number of other important bills for conservatives. So the governor then called us back in a special session beginning in July. A special session is 30 days. It can be less, it cannot be more. And on the second or third day, the Democrats got on a plane and flew to Washington, and they broke the quorum in the Texas House. And what that means is you can't take up any legislation. I was able to hold the quorum. I kept enough Democrats left in the Senate that we passed every bill. There were 10 or 11 the governor put on the call. We passed every bill, but there's no one to receive them in the House. But we did our work and we passed our legislation. So now this session runs out the end of next week, and then another session will be called right after that. And the Democrats will either come back or not. Right now, we hear they may be coming back, but we're not sure. And the governor said we'll call special after special after special. We have to pass this important legislation, specifically on election security and on bail bond reform and other key bills.
Now, initially, this Texas kind of runaway move was sort of celebrated in the media as a kind of beautiful effort to evade this election integrity law. And they were campaigning, as I take it, in Washington for H.R. 1, the kind of nationalizing or federalizing of elections. So far, that seems to have really gone nowhere. And so those guys are just camping out in Washington, D.C. If you were them, would you just stay there, or do you think that they're going to feel the pressure to come back? And if they come back, will they in fact be kind of arrested and escorted to the legislative session? What's going to happen if they do come back?
Yeah. So Dinesh, what has happened is, and 65% of Republicans do not want the federal government to run our elections. That means Republicans, Democrats, and Independents. They don't want the Democrats. They don't want Congress running our elections. And so what these Democrats who have left, what they're really trying to do is usurp our own power, their own power in the state of Texas to set the elections. The Supreme Court's been very clear. The states run the elections. And so this H.R. 1, that's a terrible bill for America, and it would be terrible for Texas. That's what they're really fighting for. They're going up there saying, please pass this bill. And they've failed, as you said. And back in 2003, I didn't join the Senate until 2007, became lieutenant governor in 2014. But back in 2003, the Democrats took off 2002, 2003, that time period, and they went to Oklahoma and they went to New Mexico. And what happened, Dinesh, at the end of the day, after about 30 days or so, they get bored of looking at each other. They start even getting jealous, infighting. Well, how come you got to do this interview today? How come you were on television? I wasn't. And mama back home says, hey, you need to get back. You need to be back to work, or dad, for the women who serve in the Democrat Party. Their spouses say, it's time for you to come back home. You're missing this, you're missing that. And their job saying, hey, you can't stay away from forever. Our legislature in Texas, many people around the country may not know this, makes $600 a month. We are a citizen legislature, so they all have a job. So at some point, they get pressure from their families and their job to come back. They can't stay there forever, Dinesh. They have to come back. And if they do come back and don't show up to the Capitol, they will be apprehended by our state police, and they will be brought back to the Capitol.
Dan, a bunch of the January 6 defendants are facing charges, and apart from the minor charge of like trespassing, being in without authorization in a federal building, one of the kind of notable and standout charges is obstructing an official proceeding. And my question is, morally speaking, what is the difference between a group of ragtag guys, quote, disrupting, evidently for a few hours, an official proceeding, and a minority legislative wing of a party essentially subverting a legislative proceeding in the state of Texas and taking off? I realize they didn't storm the Texas Capitol, but by leaving the state, they stop a legislative proceeding from going forward. So is it not a fact that these are subverters and not champions of democracy?
Yeah, well, Dinesh, you're right on target. In fact, what I've said many times in interviews, this is anarchy in the halls of the Capitol. They're no different than the anarchists in the street that are disruptive to how society operates. And in our state, our quorum is a very small level, actually. If we don't have 2/3, in other words, just one, there are 150 House members. So if 51 House members leave, they break quorum. In the Senate, I have 31 senators. If I have 21, I can continue to operate. But if I don't have 21, I can't operate. Most states in the country are just 50-50. So in most states, they couldn't walk out. The minority could not have tyranny over the majority. But in Texas, and this has been in our laws, in our Constitution forever, it's only 1/3 have to leave plus one. And so by their slim minority, we still have about 80 some to 90 members in the House, but we need 100. So 51 left for Washington, or they're hiding out somewhere in Texas that we can't find them. But this is anarchy. They're just stopping the ability for government to function. In fact, at the end of this month, if they don't come back, nearly 2,000 people who work at the Capitol won't get paid because the governor vetoed Article 10 of the budget that we passed in May that pays the staff, all the staffs and all the people that work in the Capitol. It doesn't impact the members, Dinesh. Again, they only make $600 a month. They don't care if they lose their paycheck, but it's important to all of the people here at the Capitol. So they don't even care if people lose their health insurance and their jobs that work for them. They are so singular focused on this. They have to stop, photo ID at the booth. They just want, they don't want any security at all at the ballot box. Now, they've recently, as you know, turned around and said, well, we're really for photo voter ID, but they're not. They want to stop that. We've had it, Dinesh, since 2011 when I was in the Senate. I was one of the authors of that bill. It's worked fine. Dinesh, this is something most people don't know in Texas. They keep talking about how we want to suppress the votes, and we don't as Republicans. This is about securing the vote, mail-in ballots and in-person ballots. We have increased voting in Texas, Dinesh, more than any other state in the country in the last 10 years, over 40%. In our gubernatorial elections, over 76%. Our presidential elections, over 40%. 58% of Texans who were registered voted 10 years ago. Today, it's 68% nearly. So we have expanded the vote more than any other state in the country. They have no basis to stand on calling this a voter suppression bill. It's just a lie.
When we come back, I want to take up a little different topic with Dan Patrick, namely the border.